Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mimi and today I'm going to be sharing with you how I was able to save my boss a couple of hours from his day. Like he does this thing with Excel where he creates pivot tables and it does this like every day. There's a way you can automate some things in Excel, and today I'm going to be showing you how you can do that. First, I'm going to show you what my boss usually do like every day. He gets this file from the business and he does pivot table with it to create some reports. And after that, I'm going to show you how I was able to automate that for him to save him some time in Excel. So today we're going to be working with this employee data that has the ID, first name, last name, salary, state, and zip code. So what my boss usually do is he has this file. Let's say this is his file. Is going to click on it and say insert and goes to pivot table. It creates this pivot table and then it drags all the columns that it needs. Let's say it needs ID, it needs first name, last name, salary, state, zip. Fine. Then it makes this look pretty a little bit. See? And then it gets rid of some things that it doesn't need. Like for example, it does not need this. You can get rid of it by clicking this. It does not want this. You can get rid of this, and the same with this. So let's get rid of this as well. Now we can see the grand total of all the salaries that we have currently. Let's assume that we just have this 5 employees. So let's say this is the pivot table. He sends this over and it's done. And then to the same thing tomorrow, he does the same thing. Next day, he does the same thing. This is manual work. You don't have to do this. There's a way you can do this with Excel. So how do we do this in Excel? What we're trying to achieve, let's say we have a new employee. My boss has to go and run the pivot table again, and this will now bring the new employee. Let's say Adam is our new employee. How can we automate this in Excel? So first we have to open up a new Excel where we're going to be doing all the automation. This is going to be separate from the file that you get from the business. That file has already been saved on my machine. So you can save that somewhere on your computer. So the next thing we need to do is to go to data and say get data. If you click this, it's going to give you a variety of options. In our case, it's going to be an Excel workbook, since that's what my boss usually gets. Sometimes it can be a CSV file as well. So I'm going to be clicking Excel workbook, and here this is our data. I'll click it and say import and give it a couple minutes. Here it's asking you, okay, what sheets do you want me to use? Usually when you get data from the business, it usually comes in like a sheet, or sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3. In our case, it's just sheet 1. And just click on it here to verify the data that's in there. This is the right data that we're looking for. I'm going to click transform data. The reason why I'm not just going to go to load is because I need to verify the data that is coming in from my file. So I like to click transform data. And this is going to open up Power Query for me. Power Query is a transformation machine in Excel, and it's in Power BI as well. It helps you to transform your data. So if your data used to look somehow, you can transform it and say, oh, anytime I load this data, please help me change it to look this way. So this is where we do all the transformation in Excel. So first thing first, remember the last video we talked a lot about the zip code, because sometimes the zip code can start with 0, and in our case now Power Query has made it to be a whole number. A whole number has gotten rid of the 0 here in our data. If you remember that data had a 0 here, so we've talked about this in my previous video, but how do we fix this? We just need to click text we explained this as well. Please go back to that video to get more details. So here I'm just going to click this. If you notice that the 0 is back here, and I'm going to change salary as well to be currency, and the same thing here. And always remember to name your file. So I'm going to name this employee data, and we are good to go. I'm just going to load this here and say close and load to. This is going to help me to add it to the data model, and say okay. And this is going to, if you notice here, it's loading. So we have 7 employees in our data. So as you can see, we have all those people. Okay, you can say, okay, it's the same thing. Well, we're almost there. So the next thing is to create the Power Pivot. I'll say insert. I'll go to Power Pivot. And now it's going to give me this option because now I have data in my data model. We're going to have a video that we can go in depth about data model. But for now, I'm just going to click it and say, okay. Now, as you can see here, we have this two. This one right here is referring to this employee data tab here. And this other one that has this like a bucket is referring to the data in the data model. So they have the same thing here, but I like to use this one. So let's say we want to have all this information here about our employee. So we're going to make the same thing to make it look pretty. I'm going to click on classic and say okay. As you can see here, we have all this data here. The zip code here is 02134, which is what we want. So the next thing now, you can say, okay, Mimi, it's the same thing like my boss would usually do. So what's the difference? The difference is in the power of the automation. So now let's say tomorrow my boss does not need to do this all over again. All he has to do is come here and click refresh next time that there's a new file, or you can just right click and go to refresh. So if I refresh now, nothing is going to change because we don't have a new employee. So I'm going to go to the file that we're using. This is the file right here. I'm going to click it. Let's add a new person and see how that's going to change. So I'm going to add a new employee. Let's make their ID 3034. Let's give them a nice name and say maybe Apple. Their name is Apple and their last name is Eats. The salary is $20. They are in where are they? They're in New York. Their zip code is 7. Let's just give them a zip code. Okay, so let me save this, and now I'm going to close it, and let's come back here. All we have to do now, we don't have that Apple person here. All I have to do is to right click and go to refresh, and that should bring them in here. You see, we have Apple here automatically. I don't have to redo the pivot table every day. I just have to make sure that I put the file in the right location. When I have the file in the right location, I come into the automation file, I click refresh. So you want to use refresh all. Let's say we have multiple pivot table, just click refresh all. It's going to refresh them automatically. And let's say I have just one like this, I'm just going to click refresh and it will refresh it. I hope you learned something, friends. Please share the video and like, subscribe, and have a wonderful day. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.
Thank you.